A and then the ring around it. See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was a vowel.
Yeah. Oh.
But I've never heard it. I've never heard it said. I've only seen the mark, but never heard it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
And you gotta be around here, but watch your music.
See, there it is. Violence at NBC, GE com. I mean,
Well, Allison should know.
what is internet anyway?
Internet is that massive computer network, the one that's becoming really big now.
That's why, what do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in the studio shortly.
What is it?
Anthony?
It's a giant computer network made up of, started from.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's a computer billboard.
It's not, it's a computer billboard, but it's
Right.
nationwide. It's several universities and everything all joined together.
Right,
And others can access it.
right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger.
It's
Just
even
right.
really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie that.
But you don't need that, you don't need a phone line to operate your phone? No.
So, I'll let you, while you're pulling up the presentation. So we thought that was a really good way to start it off, right? Because in the early 90s, the Today Show is saying, what is the internet anyway, right? Is anyone really going to use it? It was, and now we're sitting here and it's funny, right, to watch it. And so we believe, 5 years from now, somebody's going to say, can you believe someone didn't know what Bitcoin was? That they had no idea and they laughed at it as a joke. And so as you saw that evolve, and so there's a slide coming up here in just a second, really, which is kind of our mission statement for what we are and who we are. We introduced ourselves, but really we're 5 guys who became very interested in cryptocurrency. Some of us as early as last April, so those are the ones that have really good gains now, and some of us didn't start until maybe the October, November timeframe buying into cryptocurrency, right? But what we believed was we need to become educated, right? This is truly going to be an investment portion of our life. An investment portion is that we need to become educated. From a point of reference, the 5 of us do own 6 figures in cryptocurrency today. Through that, and we don't say it to brag, but just to say we've spent a lot of time researching it. We've spent a lot of time learning, and so as we dived into watching people get rich, we said, okay, what's the technology behind it? What does it mean? And what is that? And so after having, getting tired of having lunches with people and dinners with people and spending hours educating them, we just said, why don't we have a company? And why don't we work to build a community that educates itself around that? And so, don't know how many have been to our website, but we have typically a daily blog that's real short YouTube video, and it's really just meant to discuss the cryptocurrency and blockchain market. What's going on? What's the government saying? What are the countries saying? And those things. And it's meant to be an educational company. We're adding things in the future. This is really the baseline kind of blockchain and business education. We start to move towards trading. We have some trading classes that's actually a paid trading class where, we, as part of you buying the class, we give you crypto and you learn to trade it in the class and understand it. But this is meant to just start you on the education. And I use a quick story. When I was 17 years old, I was selling on eBay, and I was selling a product called How to Put Pictures on eBay. And my parents were like, are you selling drugs? What is this? This internet's going away. This isn't real. You need a job. And this is, later in life saying, hey, I think we can educate people around the blockchain, around that. And so we're open to talk to people about their ideas, about places to come speak. We're very blessed, and we must say thank you to Vault405 and Citizen Bank for asking us to come do this class. The first class we had was at 36 Degrees North in Tulsa, which is a co-working site like this one. So, we believe in the evolution of digital currency, the underlying technologies that make the societal shift possible, and we're passionate about teaching. We have a lot of conversations about it. And so if you're here, congratulations, you are on the forefront, seriously. They say less than 8% of the US has crypto assets right now, as opposed to South Korea and Japan that are up in the 30 to 40% of their total population owns crypto assets. So it's just, the US is always lags in the technology side of things. Here we go, the next slide. So why are you here? And we really want to start this off with what we call a purpose process payout. You're here hopefully because you want to learn more about the blockchain. How does it work and what purpose does it serve in business? Our goal is to answer these questions and maybe a few more as we simplify the blockchain a little bit for you guys. And by the end of the class, we hope you walk away with a better understanding of the basics of kind of what the blockchain is and eager to venture further into what we believe and what many are calling the fourth generation or the fourth industrial revolution of mankind. So we put this slide up here, and this is really the basis of blockchain. And if you don't remember anything from this class, we want you to remember what started the blockchain and this trust in the US government or trust in general. So monetary systems are built on trust in government, and that trust has been steadily eroding both in the United States and around the world. Would you agree? You have less trust for companies, right? Facebook's on Capitol Hill this week. You have less trust for banks at times, and we don't say that in a negative way, but in general, less trust for the US government. And so if you go back to the beginning of mankind, in order for us to transact business, we have to trust each other, right? Simple. If I don't trust you, we're not going to transact business. And as the beginning of man started transacting business, it probably was more like bartering apples for oranges. And then maybe a rock became the barter point. And then it was a cow or a chicken. And then it was gold, right? And gold, and really all these things were store of value, right? You have apples, I have oranges. Is 2 apples worth 3 oranges? Is 4 apples, right? And so they created things to allow that. But again, you still had to have trust. And trust was very important. And I would say in the last 200, 300 years, or even longer, we've created what we call third parties or intermediaries to allow you and I to trust business, right? If you own a home and I want to buy it, how many people have to be involved in that decision today, right? How many people get paid for you to sell me your house, for you to sell me your car? 5, 10? And so what that's done is it's created a tremendous amount of cost to do something that's as fundamental as you and I transacting business. Credit card companies are in the middle of a transaction for you and I to buy and sell something from each other because you might live in another state and I don't trust you, right? Well, I trust my credit card company that they'll give me my money back, but we all pay a cost for that, right? Or as the seller, they pay a cost. And so trust is what the blockchain was created for, was to allow people to transact business in a trusted environment.
So I'm going to jump in. I think everyone asks the same question, what is the blockchain? And we'll jump into that. But let's start with who invented the blockchain. And the answer is, we don't know. In fact, it was because of the 2008 financial collapse that a white paper was distributed. And this white paper outlined the process of a blockchain, a system in place where everyone had mutual access and transparency and accountability. And so the white paper was addressed by Satoshi Nakamoto. So if anyone's going to be accredited with anything, it's the name Satoshi Nakamoto. Once again, we don't know if it's a person, a group of people, a company, an entity, but that's how it's addressed. So, the next one. Sure. So that was blockchain. That is the individual or entity that created blockchain. But then the big question is, what is Bitcoin? Now, we've mentioned before, last year, a few of us were very heavily involved in the cryptocurrency exchange markets, and some of us were very passionate about it and understanding the technology. We were fully into it. But that brings up the big question, what is Bitcoin? So Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. And I know some of you are, while you're in the banking industry, so you're probably familiar with that aspect of it. But why was it created? It was created as an experiment to showcase that if a currency was in place and it was adopting an electronic ledger, that's what the blockchain is, an electronic ledger, you could actually transact between person A and person B, take that transaction, put it onto a block, assign it a algorithm, a calculation to it, and once that calculation is executed, your transaction is completed and it's recorded. And we'll get more into it, and that's where the decentralization comes in, where it is not simply located on one server or one person's computer. It's actually located on 6,000 computers all around the world, working together to use all of that computational power to solve these algorithms. And that was what Bitcoin represents. Using the blockchain technology, applying it to a transaction model. So then the question is, what is blockchain? So I'm not going to go into what a ledger is. Everybody here knows what a ledger is. A ledger is a living creation. Like every day, the numbers are updated. There's another balance at the end of the day, at the end of every transaction, and it gets long. It's very, very consuming. So the blockchain is simply a database that any one of us could have access to. And when I say access, that means if you have a strong enough computer, or in this case today, computers and a server, you could download this electronic ledger, in the case of Bitcoin. And on that ledger, it has every transaction that has ever been recorded. And that's what the blockchain does. It is a electronic ledger, publicly accessible, using very sophisticated calculations and algorithm and encryption to help kind of keep track of that. With each transaction that is accounted for, it's recorded, and every 10 minutes, the blockchain is updated, meaning that there's an actual time delay. So between me and Kate, if I were to buy something from him, and he were to give me some Bitcoins in exchange for the product, that transaction is recorded. And this is a live creation, a live site that you can go to. You can go to the Bitcoin website, and you can see real transactions using real money, real dollar money that's being transferred between point A and point B all around the world. Those transactions are sitting in a queue before they're processed. So the blockchain takes that moment between me and Kate, and it's recorded, and it sits there. And before that block can be added to the string of blocks before it, it has to be verified, and that verification is done by a process called proof of work. This proof of work is being conducted by 6,000 computers. So at every given moment, when before this new block of information is added on, every computer has been given a copy of it. That copy then has to be verified, meaning that all of those users, all of those computers have to check the computation, make sure that the mathematical alignment of it is correct. And if it is correct, and if more than 50% of all these computers agree upon it, it is then added back into the chain of blocks. And that is inherently the concept of blockchain. So then the question comes up, well, can't you hack it? And the answer is, anything is hackable. There is nothing impervious to hackability. However, this is not a simple hack. To hack something like that, and I said just it's a string of blocks. If I wanted to go back and hack and change our transaction, and I want to falsify it, or I want to say he actually owes me $2 instead of $1, I would have to not only hack that block, but every preceding block before that and after that. To do that, we've just established that it takes 6,000 computers working together to focus on verifying, approving proof of work before it's dispensed. That would require you to use every computer in the world and then some beyond the capacity of what's actually on that dispersed, decentralized network of computers to focus on one block, to change one character. But then as soon as you do that, everything else is going to say, hey, something is not accurate, something is not correct. So a blockchain transaction has the following attributes, which is it is shared, it is decentralized, and it is secure. The cryptography behind it is very complex, and it's mathematically driven, and it's trusted. So Jared mentioned very, very specifically the value of trust. So this distributed nature of the network requires lots of computers to work in unison, and for all these computers to reach a consensus. That's where the trust aspect is. And then it's automated. So upon this structure of a blockchain, we can create Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an outlet, it's an application of the blockchain. Now, with that said, the blockchain is actually being used by Walmart to track the freshness of strawberries. So that is a real-day application just to get an idea of how industries and companies are using it.
Tyson's using it for chicken. To track the egg to the store and the blockchain to track every aspect of it in real time.
And like that, you use it for the validation and for the specific service quality of maybe a product. So counterfeit shoes. So the blockchain is, if you were to say a parallel comparison, is the internet. The Bitcoins, these other cryptocurrencies, and these other entities that are utilizing the blockchain technology, those are the applications. So that is where it's automated. It's a software, it runs pretty much flawlessly, and it's running flawlessly because of the involvement of so many entities, individuals, computers working together. And now we're going to go into a little bit more of what centralization and decentralization means.
Sure. So the question now probably is, well, how is it different than what we have already? And touch just a little bit on just the main differences between a centralized database and a decentralized database. And speaking to a room full of a lot of bankers, you guys can grasp the concept of what a centralized system looks like. I mean, it requires one entity or individual to make the big decisions or decide the direction of where the ledger or the database is going, aka how traditional banking is working today. And this looks like a very simple graph here, but after just thinking this through, that's the most basic way to put it in comparison to something that looks like this, which is what a decentralized ledger or database would look like. Systems that have several individuals or entities responsible for making the decisions and the deciding on the direction of the ledger. And then you see down below, it makes a little statement about decentralized applications or DApps, which are peer-to-peer networks. So how many of you here have heard of Ethereum? So if you're in the cryptocurrency market at all, you've heard of Ethereum. And if you have a Coinbase account, it's usually the one right below it. Well, it's not exactly the same. Cryptocurrency, it's actually not the same at all. Bitcoin is actually a currency that we trade. This gentleman was talking about before the class started about being more interested in how the technology can be used in a business space as opposed to really getting involved in the cryptocurrency market. And that's a place where I think some people misunderstand it. Is Ethereum, think of Ethereum as more like Windows or iOS or Linux. It's a platform that something can be built upon, like what this gentleman was speaking of, wanting to using in a business case. Bitcoin is a currency, and that's it. And it was built upon the blockchain. But that's kind of the difference. If you'll just kind of let these two diagrams kind of fuse into your mind, that's the difference in centralized versus decentralized there today, where one entity or one individual is not the source of all the power, but it's power peanut butter spread across. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think for them in the banking world, right? If you think you keep my ledger, right? You keep all of our ledgers of how much money we have, and inherently through either a fee or something like that, we would pay you to keep that for us. And that's one place which we talked about centralized is hackable. We've seen that. And what the blockchain was created was, the decentralized, where you all keep my ledger now. On all your computers and your powers, you each keep a little piece of my ledger of my bank account, and you get paid in cryptocurrency to maintain that for it. And the changes, they can't hack one bank server or one Walmart. They would have to go to every one of those scenarios.
Yeah. And so if you're like me, or if you're like Bryant Gumbel or Greg Gumbel, I get them mixed up, the one that was on the Today Show at the very beginning, you're like, what's it like? And he was like, is it something that we mail stuff to? And he was asking like these questions that seemed ludicrous 23 years later, but they weren't ludicrous at the time. But still today, I'm like, well, what is it like? Well, it's kind of like Wikipedia. And if you think of, in the day of Encyclopedia Britannica, you had the guy who came to your door with the dolly and rang the doorbell and wanted to sell you 900 pounds of books that were already outdated before they ever even got printed. Well, now we have Wikipedia. That is a constant ledger or database, if you will, of all sorts of information. And I love it, and I can waste hours of my life clicking from link to link, but everyone has access to it. And everyone can modify it or make changes to it. But the most powerful piece of Wikipedia is that it all has to be validated by everyone as well. I can't go in there and say, George Washington was born in 1993, because someone's gonna go in there and they're gonna be like, well, that's not true. He was the president at in the late 1700s. So, or that was kind of a poor illustration, but you know what I'm saying. So any information has to be validated by the community that's also using Wikipedia, in the same way that Wikipedia stores words, images. The blockchain is a public registry of any type of scalable value, whether it be certificates, currency, contracts, etc. And so that's one illustration. The next one, how many of you in here have used Google Drive or cloud-based Microsoft is OneDrive or online co-working platforms? We actually built this PowerPoint. As a team, we were on the phone last night. One of us was at his house on their computer. The other one was at their house on the computer, and I'm at my house on my phone with my iPods in my ears, and I can see where his cursor is on this spreadsheet and on this document. And so Google Drive is actually a great thing to compare the blockchain to. It's an internet of information versus an internet of value is a good way to state it and to put it. You can copy and duplicate a Word document, but you don't want to be duplicating a title, for a house, right? And so the problem with, like, let's just take currency and banking for instance. If I'm editing a transaction in banking right now, I have to freeze it and pull it offline and detract money from one account and then add it to another account and then go back live with that. Whereas the blockchain is an always visible, always workable, ever growing to everyone who's using it. And it's pretty easy to see how quick, or the power of that, rather. So, and so you probably say, well, if we already have something like Google Drive, what does the blockchain add to it? Well, this isn't exactly how it works, but it's probably one of the most powerful analogies we have today of how the blockchain works. So that was quite a bit. Let's simplify here, and I'll try to walk you through just a couple of steps of kind of how the blockchain works. So a transaction is requested. Jim was talking a minute ago. We want to exchange two things of value from one another. That transaction is then broadcast to that peer-to-peer network. And I hope these very simple diagrams kind of help you. So this one in the middle is the one that's broadcasting or requesting the transaction. He doesn't just get to do it with one other computer. What he's requesting is broadcast out across the peer-to-peer blockchain.
Hold on the transaction piece, because we don't want you to think this is just about money, right? Or just about financials. So transaction broadcast could be, I'm going to buy this Louis Vuitton purse, and I want to make certain that this is really a Louis Vuitton purse and not a Steve Vuitton purse. And so I'm going to scan the QR code. It's going to use VeChain. It's going to go all the way back through the blockchain and say, yep, it's real, come back, yes, you can buy it, take your money and transact it. That could be the transaction broadcast, right? Or it could be, I'm going to buy a piece of property, and I want to know that the property has never had, flood damage or had somebody change the house, or that the house is burned down. And so maybe the title work from the day it's begun has been stored on the blockchain, and it goes back and it says, no, Jared, somebody changed this block, and this house has had a flood on it. You need to make sure you understand what you're buying. And that is what we mean by being transacted, or the broadcasted transaction. It is not just about moving money. Yep. So does that kind of help, like, different types of transactions in a real world, that the blockchain is just validating trust, that this is what it is, to allow that to happen. So that you can buy a Louis Vuitton purse directly from the person who made it and trust that it was real because that QR code has been attached to it, and the blockchain.
It's validating the train of trust.
The train of trust.
The chain of trust.
Yeah.
Train of trust.
Yes.
Everyone call it. Well,
Yes. Versus now, what do? I bet if you could buy Louis Vuitton directly from Louis Vuitton, it would be a lot cheaper than if you pay all these people in the middle who you trust. I trust this company. They're going to tell me it's real. If I can just buy directly from them, it'd be cheaper.
Yeah.
But we don't, because it's not trusted, right? Somebody goes over to Asia and brings back a bunch of purses and says, hey, I'm going to sell you these. You don't know if they're real. No, I trust Macy's. They'll give me a real one, but I pay a premium for that trust.
Yeah, and another good example we used in our last talk was the Walmart strawberries thing as well. And there was a story of a guy who was allergic to a certain pesticide that was put on strawberries, and he needed to be able to be certain that, or I think it was tangerines, but he needed to be certain that those were organic strawberries. Well, now it's no longer a guess of just a sticker that the grocery store has put on that piece of fruit that he's, risking his allergic health over. He can, if he so wishes, look on the blockchain registry, which that was recorded on, and look back and see the exact farm, row, and plot where that strawberry came from. And so that's
And if anybody ever tried to put pesticide on, it would be logged, and he would know that chain of trust is not true.
Strawberries were designated the dirtiest fruit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Walmart chose them as their first blockchain.
Possibly.
Yes, sir.
Well, what if there's data missing? What if the aerial sprayer didn't join blockchain and report that he sprayed the strawberries? What if there's data missing?
So that goes back to the validation portion. So there's a thing called a signature. So before that block can be moved on to the next rung or the next qualifier, before it's actually put back in the string, when you change that data, so in your case, in your example, is an outside force comes in and disrupts the flow, something that's supposed to go from step to step to step. Now, that specific example in that sphere would be a supply chain example. So that supply chain example would be kind of dissect a little further to say, hey, what exterior forces could influence the ship? And there's another thing that would be added to that called a smart contract. So we mentioned a thing called Ethereum, and we talked about Bitcoin. And there's a concept, or it is called smart contracts. And these smart contracts are very, very elaborate. If anyone's a computer science person, mine's the IBM guy in the back, you know what these if-then-else statements are. You've probably seen all these little flow charts. So when strawberries are moving from one portion to another, or when data is being moved along that path, that smart contract will also be overlaying that process to say, hey, if this happens, then this should happen, else it should get kicked back. So for instance, your freshness of product, exterior forces would be if something should happen to this product, and if it should get to this point, then it needs to qualify these chemical passing parameters or check marks. If it doesn't, then why does it not happen? Kick it back. That's probably me consolidating a lot of things at once, but that's how you.
I was going to take
I'm sorry.
a stab really quick, and basically it was going to say, it depends, right? If Walmart goes and says you have to be on the blockchain for us to buy your product, then it will force all the other businesses to it, right? Or they just won't, right? They'll only be able to sell to this person, to Reezers, because Reezers will accept you and Walmart won't. I mean, at the end of the day, if whatever company is going to say this has to follow the blockchain, every vendor and every person around it will have to get on board with it for it to validate it.
Do you want to add to that?
Oh, that's pretty close to what I was going to say. It's the contracts, for example, have to be validated every time in every place, right? So as it goes down, there's going to be a check to make sure that there's not a certain set of pesticides. So it's going to go to a lab, and that's going to be a smart contract that's on the chain. If it doesn't pass that, then that's going to invalidate the blocks or that chain ahead of it. So it will never get to you because it hasn't passed that smart contract. Right? That's just one step down the process. So yeah, you could skip that and not put it on, not have it register that you put that bad pesticide on there. But later on, it's going to invalidate the entire crop because it's not going to pass the smart contract. You understand what I'm saying?
That makes sense, yeah.
Sure. Cool. So, question, maybe, well, what's maybe the problem a little more in depth with the current situation that we have now? Well, obviously when we were dealing just in paper money, there was obviously the problem with counterfeit, but that was a large and arduous task, and obviously counterfeit paper, even as good as it was still counterfeit, but it was much easier to counterfeit digital currency when we went to credit cards and we went to online banking, and really smart computer science hackers could go on and they could hack, and it kind of created what a lot of people call the double spend problem.
Because if you could hack a bank account, you could just add a number to it, right? And there was nothing really validating whether that happened.
Sure. So this is just kind of an illustration of the double spend problem. So you have two sellers selling an issue or selling anything or transacting anything. My mind naturally reverts back to money. I apologize, but as Jared said a minute ago, we're validating any sort of transaction. It's not just financial. These numbers here, that's actually pretty close to what a hash graph looks like. If anyone in here trades cryptocurrency, that's what that looks like, and it's a series of 30 alphanumeric digits that are tagged with each individual transaction. And if a buyer attempts to use that same hash graph or that same coded transaction twice, it'll await confirmation and it'll eventually just be abandoned and blocked, and then that transaction will be denied. So another pretty simple little flow chart there, but kind of gives you a picture of what was the double spend issue and how the blockchain and how the white paper helps to solve it. Good.
Chain spends vote on this chart, and you would have something very similar, right? That's not currency based. That shows you how you would avoid double voting.
Yes. So I love that you said that right before the class, and you said that right before we're about to get started. So I don't want to dial up into that, but that personally, and we have another class that we give called 10 Main Industries that the blockchain will disrupt. And voting is right there at the top of that. And everyone saw the 2016 presidential election live, and that was not the first political election where one side accused the other side of tampering with votes and whatnot.
That wasn't Chad's, right?
That wasn't Chad's, yeah. The blockchain is an incredible fit for the voting platform issues that we have today. And so just one other way. Thank you for bringing that up. So the question is just kind of how secure is it? And I love this, and I won't take credit for it. A guy named Don Tapscott, who's kind of you're shaking your head. I think you probably know who he is. He's kind of a forefront guy on blockchain. And to quote him, he just said, "The way I like to think of the blockchain is something that is highly processed, kind of like a chicken McNugget, little pieces of processed chicken. And so to hack the blockchain, it would be like turning a chicken McNugget back into a chicken. And someday, as Jim said earlier, that will be possible. Somebody will figure out how to turn the nugget back into the chicken. But for the next period of human history, it's going to be something that's going to be very hard to do just because of the all eyes on peer-to-peer nature of how the blockchain works. So
to hack it takes more computing power than exists on planet Earth, times like 100. And so someday, 500 years from now, if that whatever, the blockchain will be hackable, and our great-great-grandchildren will be talking about some new technology currency, right? But for today's era, for the next hundreds of years, it's unhackable.
And they'll play videos like this and make fun of us like we did the Today Show. So now we'll see if this video works any better than the last one. So do you want to kind of introduce this?
Yeah, so we have a couple short videos, and we took them from a couple companies. One is Stellar Lumen, which if you're working with IBM announced a major partnership with Stellar Lumen last week, 2 weeks ago, and this is directly how Stellar in the banking industry. And one of the things, and we didn't talk about it in the beginning, but often you hear, what world problems does blockchain solve, right? What does it actually do? And if you take somebody who moved here from Honduras, and let's say she works and earns money and she wants to send a remittance home to her family, well, often that takes a week to get the money there, and it costs maybe 10, 15% just for her to take her money and get it home to her mom back where she's from. And so this starts to show you how you can transact business, not only in that instance, but every time I travel a lot and every time I go through an airport, I see a currency exchange. And why I need to pay someone 5% just to turn my money into their money to buy something in today's world, it's crazy to me, right? And so Stellar is a cryptocurrency company attempting to, I don't know about the word disrupt, but work with the banking industry directly to put them on the blockchain around the world. And that's what this video is.
How money moves on Stellar. Meet Amy. Amy is a customer of Universal Remittance Company in the US and often sends payments to Tunde in Nigeria. Meet Tunde. Tunde is a customer of Domestic Bank in Nigeria. Meet Stellar. Stellar is an open platform that connects banks, payment systems, and people. Both Domestic Bank and Universal Remittance Company have integrated with Stellar, so they can move money quickly, reliably, and at almost no cost. When Amy sends Tunde $100 through her remittance company's mobile application, within fractions of a second, it sends a message to Domestic Bank to make sure Tunde's account is compliant. Then the remittance company, which is an anchor on the Stellar network, meaning that it can accept deposits and issue credits on the Stellar network, deducts the funds from Amy's individual account. Those funds are moved over to Universal's pool account, and then moved on to Stellar by issuing credits for Amy's dollars on the network. Once Universal's credits are inside Stellar, the network searches for the best exchange rate amongst all the market makers on the network. The exchange is complete, and now the Nigerian Naira moved to Domestic Bank's base account. Domestic Bank receives these digital credits for Naira from the Stellar network, and Domestic Bank credits Tunde's personal account. That is how $1 US converts to any of 180 currencies on Stellar, moves in 5 seconds or less, and costs a fraction of a cent. A Stellar integration starts with a conversation between our team and yours. Join these companies who have committed to faster, cheaper, and more secure payments.
So we don't,
Contact partners at stellar.com.
we're not here representing Stellar, but we're here representing education, right? And let's talk about some key things from that video that are different than the way it does today. The first one that jumps out at me is time. Can I move money across the world in 5 seconds through a traditional banking system? I can't, right? It's days, it's validating, is this real, is this person? I mean, it's days, it's weeks, depending on the country that it's going to. Can I move money through a traditional financial system for less than 1/100th of a cent? I can't, right? It's not possible in today's system. Does it take the banks away? Yes.
Will that price ever go up?
So that's a wonderful question.
It will not go down.
So this comes in to the next point, right? Which comes into what I was going to say is the video, right? You don't see the banks aren't going away. This isn't intended to show the banks are going away. It's intended to show how two banks can work together in a system, right? And so when you ask, will that price go up? It might. And this is kind of where you delve into the cryptocurrency world, right? So the third major thing I was going to say is different is Stellar is a decentralized. Don't think of it as a company, right? You're not paying your fee to Stellar, the company. You're paying your fee to transact money. Citizens Bank or the person is paying it to all of us if we own Stellar Lumens or if we provide the server power to power their system. And so this allows anyone that owns Stellar Lumen, and so you ask, will it go up? Well, if Stellar becomes the thing that's used, right? The question is StellarPets.com or Amazon.com, right? Is any of these crypto companies Pets.com or Amazon.com? It waits to be determined. So Stellar may go to 0, Stellar may go up based on how many people use it, what is the value, what is it, and that gets into the actual cryptocurrency, right? The business portion is moving money. The cryptocurrency is what you and I are paid for participating in that blockchain transaction. That help? And that's when you decide, and we'll talk in a minute, what do I want to invest in, right? Do I want to own cryptocurrencies? What business use does it solve? Do I believe in the team? Do they have the funding as you make your investments? Completely separate. Citizens Bank could use Stellar and never invest in Stellar, ever. You can invest in Stellar and never use them as a service. So the next one, because we didn't want to just focus on the banking, and this kind of is what I already alluded to, but this is blockchain and retail.
VeChain invents its proprietary chipset within luxury products, giving each product a unique ID on the VeChain Vault blockchain. Brands can track the whole journey of each luxury product, upload key data to the VeChain or blockchain at each step. Using blockchain technology, brands can monitor their sales channels in real time, preventing illegal overstock trading. Consumers can check the authenticity of the product simply with a mobile app. Brands can provide additional product information to customers, charting the story behind the product. Customers can even craft their own stories, creating an emotional bond with their products by uploading their moments to the VeChain platform. User-generated content offers brands valuable feedback and insights into their customers so that they can optimize their brand experience and CRM strategies. VeChain is an invaluable companion for sellers on secondary marketplaces, offering swift, painless product authentication. Now, brands can nurture even deeper relationships between their products and customers. VeChain puts control back into the hands of brands, making luxury retail transparent, seamless, and data-driven.
Again, we don't represent VeChain, although the three of us up here own VeChain. Big believers in what they're doing because their CEO, or the head of VeChain, is the former CEO of Louis Vuitton Asia. He understands logistics issues, right, in Asia. You've got millions of products, and VeChain was created for, inventory management, tracking, right? And so now all of a sudden you're going, okay, so this is why when you hear blockchain can disrupt Macy's, right? If all of a sudden you want to sell Louis Vuitton purses and you partner with Louis Vuitton and you use VeChain, you can sell it at a fraction of the cost of what Macy's can, right? Because you don't have the infrastructure required because you're using the VeChain network to transact business. These are only two industries being disrupted by blockchain, but we thought that would give at least real world application of how that it's happening. So we're going to move now quickly into a little discussion, 3 or 4 slides on the investing portion, right? And the investing community that's beginning to look at cryptocurrencies as an asset class, not a commodity, not a bubble, but an asset class. And I'm going to read a few stats. Yes, sir.
Any comments on EOS as a platform?
Not specifically. As you know or don't know, there's 1,700 platforms out right now, probably add a 0 to that by the end of this year. And so I personally don't have any comments on US. So I have a few notes just that I'll read from it because it's a little easier just to read from them. So cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are creating what roughly 96 million millennials crave: decentralization, digital scarcity, and native trust. And so when you look at it, and there's a really good video that Thomas Lee put out on YouTube, and it talks about how did things change over time? How did asset classes change, right? One asset class single-handedly made gold valuable. If you look at over time, it wasn't valuable until a generation decided it was valuable. And that generation has to be big enough to move an asset class in order for it to have value. The baby boomers are the largest generation in the history. They have the ability to move the needle on asset classes. And so the average of them is 26 years old right now. They are just coming into their age. They don't trust the government. They don't trust traditional systems. Edward Jones will tell you they aren't buying stocks. They aren't investing. They're buying crypto. They just don't have enough money yet to move the needle. But it's coming. And so when you look, boomers in their 20s embraced the birth of personal computers in the 70s and 80s. Generation Xers in their 20s were around for internet and e-commerce, Amazon, cellular, text messages, and Google. Each of those previous cohorts adopted disruptive, misunderstood advances the prior generation couldn't grasp. Presently, 20-year-olds, 2000s and on, have grown up entirely digital. Facebook, Uber, online dating, Instagram, crowdfunding, and of course, Bitcoin. Their entire life has been digital, right? They don't go on a date. They have apps for that. To think that they won't move to a digital currency, I think it is a little crazy, maybe. I mean, the whole world is digital. And so think of it this way, all of these and more advances in tech have been resisted by the previous generations, by my parents, to greater or lesser degree. And I want you to think of something. Imagine trying to explain to a person in 1990, there would be a $500 billion company, market cap company, that would rely on folks voluntarily sharing their information. Its product would be free, and all they would do is sell advertising. They couldn't conceive a thing. A 500, half a trillion dollar, $500 billion market cap company that doesn't do anything that's free. And here we have Facebook, right? Our parents would have said that will never exist. No one will put money into a company like that, and here we are. And so what we're seeing and what data is seeing is that millennials are believing in this as an asset class, that they are beginning to pour money into it. Crypto assets are already larger than most countries' equity markets. Okay, you can see it's larger than Saudi Arabia, it's larger than Thailand, Indonesia, Belgium, Malaysia, Mexico. It's already larger than them. And so you have companies out there who have created ETFs for countries, right? You can buy a Japan ETF or a China ETF, which buys you assets. There are ETFs coming out right now for crypto assets. And so it's not a tiny market, you know, at $500 billion, it is already larger than those companies. Next slide. So should I invest in cryptocurrency? You know, this is just an enhanced portfolio return. And I think anything you read, anything out there will say, this is a speculative asset. Don't put more than 2 to 5% of your total net worth, right? Whatever that is, if you're interested in it. But what it's shown is crypto can add return. It can boost the Sharpe ratio. And by adding just 2% to your portfolio at the 3-year annualized rise of 226 basis points, you can see what that would do. You can see what the returns would do by just having 2% of your money in the speculative asset. And again, we're not giving financial advice. We're not telling you to do that. We're simply giving you some facts that have been presented around this asset class. The last slide on this just shows, you know, the bull, the bear markets that it's seen. People say, oh, it's crashed from 20,000. Well, it also was at 1,200 once and went down to 200. That was a pretty large crash, right? It is seen rise and falls as the adoption rate has gone. And where people tend to trust their money, it grows in value. The $280 trillion collectibles market, gold, art, real estate, government bonds, cars, Bitcoin averages just around 200 billion. The collectibles market is 280 trillion. Bitcoin is 200 billion. And if Bitcoin captures just 1%, right? If 1% of the people move out of art and cars and say, you know what, I would like to add Bitcoin to that, it takes the price of Bitcoin to $150,000 Bitcoin. If 1% move out of that asset class. Now we all know, right? People move in and out of asset classes. Baseball cards are not worth today what they were when I was a child. Maybe someday they move back to it, but the data shows there that 1% moving out of that could send Bitcoin to that. So, you know, in conclusion, we feel, many people feel, we believe that this is not just a change in economics or policy or politics, but a true computer science that should be the fourth industrial revolution of mankind. You know, it's our mutual distrust of one another that makes this appealing, and that becomes the power of the blockchain. So at that point, we wanted to show one more quick video, and then we'll take the questions. So this being the educational piece, we also have a full trading class. We have one coming up in a couple weeks in Tulsa, where we're going to, you know, for people who want to learn how do I buy Bitcoin, how do I buy Ethereum, how do I buy altcoins, right? What are the altcoins that exist? How do I have digital wallets? How do I move money apart? We're having a class on that, and we'll send you guys all info on that if you're interested. We talked to Marla about coming over and being able to do a trading class over here. It is a paid class. It's very in-depth and hands-on of our time. And as part of the class, we provide you crypto so you can trade and learn and see how to do it in the future. This is just a quick video on that, on the class. So even starting late, we finished a minute late, so not too bad. Crypto with Us is our website. You can access everything from there. There's a daily blog. We have a YouTube channel, a Facebook page. We would love for you to sign up on there and get that. But the daily stuff is just meant to educate you, to keep you up to date with what's going on in the world. We have feedback forms that we would love for you to fill out just quickly. Just to let us know how we did as we're starting up. We again thank Marla and Citizens Bank for inviting us over here for this. But if you'll fill that out, and at this point we'll take any questions that you guys have. Thank you for coming. So questions? Yes.
So you mentioned how transactions are really quick, but one of the biggest issues I've heard with Bitcoin, and I'm not that educated on this, one of the biggest issues I've heard with Bitcoin is that it takes so long to buy something. It's not very useful as a currency. So how is that being addressed?
So you're right. So when Bitcoin came out, it was the first, right? And so I mentioned that there's this 10-minute window, this 10-minute time scale before the block is updated. And that's because at the time, you have to think, it was 2009, computers at that time were far slower than where they are today 10 years later. So that had a big impact on it. At that time, it was fast, considering the scientific or the computer skill that they had to work on. Today, there are equivalent Bitcoin-like cryptocurrencies that run at a fraction of the speed. For example, Ripple. Ripple runs, I believe, at 2.5 minutes. So their block gets updated every 2.5 minutes. There's others out there, and that's also coming back to the size of your server, or the number of folks that are involved with it. There are cryptocurrencies that run at a block update speed of about 30 seconds. But where are they today? They're just getting started, and it's also using current day technology. So this is all driven by the scalability of our computational powers, both in the US and abroad, because it's not just limited to any one country. So to answer your question, there are other options that are being introduced.
The good thing about blockchain is that it takes a lot of nodes to verify it. The bad thing about blockchain is it takes a lot of nodes to verify it.
Right.
So you're at the mercy of the slowest node.
And it's still very early, right? I mean, and there's going to be different blockchain or cryptos to solve different problems, right? And when we say Bitcoin as a currency today, because of its speed and its cost to maintain, it's not believed that it will be as much of a currency as much of a store of value, right? Gold is a store of value. It's real hard for us to transact business and carry buckets of gold around to do business, right? So it's a store of value. Bitcoin is a finite, divisible resource that is believed to be a store of value. Things like Ripple and things like that could maybe be more like a currency because they're going to be smaller. There's 100 million Ripples, not 21 million Ripples, or not 21 million Bitcoins. And so a lot of those things are being addressed. And then you have things like Bitcoin Lightning Network, where you have people coming in and forking or adding to it to make Bitcoin faster, cheaper to work with. We're in the early 1990s where things are skyrocketing for no apparent reason, right? And it's why it's very speculative, why education is extremely important, because I think you're going to see, just like in the 90s, 95% of the dot-coms went out of business, right? But those that didn't made tremendous returns for people. And even such things as like Amazon, right, that was at $1 and went to 100, and people poured in and bought, and then it crashed, and they thought, I bought at the worst time, aka crypto in December. But now, would you like to hold Amazon at 100? You would, right? It's $1,500 a share. And so perspective, long-term, but also education and understanding.
So what about the people that trade the cryptos? I don't know much about it at all, but there's cold storage. It's hackable. It is hackable if you leave it on the network.
Because you're in a centralized.
That's about all I know. So help me put that in perspective.
Yeah. So it's what's hackable is when you leave it in a centralized exchange, right? So leave it. Coinbase is FDIC insured. Bittrex, Binance. The exchange, you have exchanges out in the world, right? That we will call them E-Trade, Fidelity, those types, right? Those are, leave it to mankind to take a decentralized, open to the public world and turn it into a centralized for-profit company, right? So Binance, all those are for-profit, and they are centralized worlds that, yes, can be hacked. Crypto itself, if you buy it and move it to cold storage, to a hardware wallet, that's basically like if you have cash in your wallet and you go bury it in the ground, I can't probably hack it, right? If you bury it where no one can find it, but the problem is if you forget where you put it, no one will ever find it. And so that's
lose my password.
Right. If you lose your hash graph, right? Because it's different than a password. It's you have a public and a private key. So your public key is how you and I transact business. I tell you to send me your public key. I give you my public key. You send something to me. My private key is how I access it. And so there's a guy over in Europe right now who is suing the city because he mined Bitcoin 6 years ago. He has like $70 million in Bitcoin in a wallet. He can see it because he has his public key and he can see that no one's accessed it, but his private key is buried at the bottom of a landmine because his girlfriend threw out his server that had all of his Bitcoin private key, and he can never, and so he's trying to get access to go dig this landfill up and look for it because he'll never access it.
Yeah.
But he can see that it's there. He can every day wake up and see his $70 million, but he will never be able to access it.
But nothing will ever not be hackable, right? I mean, we have SSLs today, which we trust with our banking systems today. And we're having to go to new versions of SSL because quantum computing can now hack the SSL encryption so quickly. So yeah, will it be hackable?
Someday.
It'll be a lot harder when there's a lot of different systems that you have to hack at the same time.
Simultaneously, yes.
But someday, yes, it will.
How does the government play into this? It seems like that's a significant shift in.
It waits to be seen, right? So it's what's added more volatility to the market than anything, right? Now, the government has come out and said, do no harm. We're going to, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Capitol Hill where the senator or the congressman came out and said, listen, we would do a disservice if we didn't look at this. My children own crypto. He said, I couldn't get my children to invest and they all own crypto. And we have to look at a generation and see what do they want to do. I think regulation will be good for the market. Now, this is a personal opinion, not the opinion of anyone, but I think general regulation will be good for the market.
Dow Jones, the Dow Jones service, which is a computer service that handles the Dow Jones stock exchange, has already stated that they are going to Bitcoin, that they're going to require their suppliers to be on Bitcoin, blockchain. They're going to require them to be on blockchain. And those 3-day trades, they want to get it down to hours.
Yeah.
So that's already a stated policy, and that's one of the regulations you're talking about. So
the government's trying to figure out how to tax it. You know, big part of the market right now is, I mean, you had tremendous amounts of people become multi-millionaires last year. You know, 16-year-old kids. There was a special on CBS. He owns a $10 million apartment in downtown New York because he convinced his parents when he was 11 to buy Bitcoin. So you have tremendous amount of taxes. The government wants the taxes, right? They want to maintain the control. This threatens control, right? I mean, and not to pick a political side, but we all know there's corruption at all levels. And there's a certain portion of the government that likes that voting fraud, right? They like that because it allows for people to be manipulated. And without the manipulation, it threatens a way of life, right? It threatens a government. And I'm not here to be a tinfoil hat guy and say that the world's going to end because of this and it's here to take down the man. I think it's just here to change the way we transact business.
And money, you talking about the government, money drives everything, right? The dollar, everybody wants it. Wall Street also is a very large player in this. Coinbase made $600 billion last year in fees, in basically trading fees. People are trading so much, off and on, off and on. You have all these day traders, they're making a ton of money. And so you have things happening like Wells Fargo funding Circle, which is a payment processing, which then Circle then turns around and buys Polymex, which is one of the largest exchanges that there are. Wall Street and investments are coming. They're happening right now.
Yeah.
That's when you will see a massive, massive flow of money in on an institutional level. And the prices skyrocket. whether we wanted it to or not.
But I don't think it's really going to be the government that's going to affect something like the banking industry as much, because you're already highly regulated, and that regulation is going to stay there, and it's going to be that way. I think your biggest issue as a bank is that you have a whole set of new competitors now that are competing against banking. And, you know, you look at the telephone companies, you know, these cell companies. This is really your next competitor. People that are producing software like Apple, with Apple Pay. You have Samsung Pay. You have all these payment systems, Zelle. I mean, that's going to be your big disruptor. It's not going to be the bank down the street.
You're spot on, right? It threatens your way of making profit, right? You make money because I keep my money in your bank, right? And the overnight you make money because of my money. What if I start putting my money in Bitcoin? And it sits in a Bitcoin wallet and not in your bank. It threatens your profit. It threatens, you know, if all of a sudden I use Bitcoin to transact and send money instead of your bank, it threatens that way of life. And so it does. It is a disruptor to the business community in the way that it does that.
Did you have a question a second ago? I thought I saw you raising your hand.
So there is, we were just at the Federal Reserve today, and there is an interagency effort to modernize and advance the U.S. payment system to make it quicker. Do you see that making cryptocurrencies less attractive, especially for people who are speculative of them?
No.
I think by
Two different things.
Yeah, by siloing data, when you silo data, you put yourself out there for an attack. I mean, when you decentralize your silos, and it's like you have to attack so many different silos of data uniformly and simultaneously, you have this perpetuated sense of safety. So going back to this whole decentralized, centralized, you know, Equifax is a horrible thing that happened to a lot of us. I mean, we don't even go that far back. Facebook was a horrible thing, a centralized location of all of our data that was hacked, right? And that was like our direct information. That was like your social security number, your life existence. The cryptocurrency world is based on what we call the hashing system. So hashing, and as Jared mentioned, is a private key, public key. The way I look at it is your house is like very public. Everybody can drive past your house every day, but your key to your house is what opens the door. So as long as you hold on to your key, you don't even have to put your name out there. You just let people know this key is who I am. It protects some layer of your personal identity enough to where you are now responsible for this. It puts that responsibility and power back into your hands. So to answer your question, it won't detract from it. If anything, people run further towards like a Bitcoin type system because once again, the decentralization of siloed data is far more attractive.
I would love the U.S. banking payment systems being close to what Africa has today. And, you know, that's weird to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
Think about what I'm just saying, okay? I mean, the work that was done with M-Pesa that we did in Kenya years ago was far ahead of what's been done here. I mean, you still hand the perfect stranger your credit card at every meal that you buy, and they walk away with it.
Right.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can
That's just a
access
moment.
your money or your debit card, right? That is perfect. Where it's different with crypto, I give you my public key. That's it. That's all you get. You don't have my private key, and you have no tangible human way on planet Earth to get to my money.
Yeah.
But you can get your money because I said you can have this. You can have this portion. And
Until
it's
you
just,
figure out how to turn the nugget back into the chicken.
right.
Then you
And
can
so someday
Maybe that's someday.
they'll figure it out. But for the foreseeable future, just the computing power is years away to be able to change that. And I think that I was just going to say, like, he talked about industries being changed by your Googles and those. And I work a lot in the automotive industry, right? Tesla, Nissan, Honda. And you know who they believe is their next consumer? Google, not us. They are fully preparing that Google, Facebook is their consumer. And we will rent cars through Google and Facebook. And that is fully their 20-year vision of where their business plan. It's not that we will buy their cars. Google will buy cars. You will schedule a ride-sharing service, and it will take you to your destination. And so things like the blockchain and cryptocurrencies enable. Ford announced they're starting to look at cryptocurrency purchases in their car, right? Hey, Alexa, order me some food from Reese's, have it delivered to my house. well, how you gonna pay? Just fill my account, you have my public key, boom, done. Shows up, right? We have services like Shipt that bring things to our house now, groceries to our house, right? Target comes to our house. All of these require digital currencies to make them move faster.
So it seems to me blockchain is the broad technology that applies in many, many areas.
Blockchain is www.
Yeah, and will proceed, this is just a view, so I don't know if it's accurate or not, will proceed in having deeper, more secure applications across industries, across platforms. And then crypto is just one segment of the blockchain market.
Yes.
Actually, it's gonna be a very small set.
That's what I'm, because it seems to me countries with fractional banking on it will never allow something out there.
Right, they may have their own blockchain that runs.
That could be, but we're in fractional banking and leveraging all that stuff, and that will never happen.
Yeah.
Out of control.
That's precisely why I'd like you guys to change some of your terminology. When you talk about blockchain, you talk about organizations, right? And nodes within those organizations and the peers that access them. Sure. So that everybody kind of gets on the same playing field how we talk about blockchain. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I really believe blockchain is going to revolutionize a lot of different industries, a lot of different ways that we transact things, not just cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, maybe that'll be one that we can come back here
That'll
and
be
put
a fun
on
little
is
discussion,
the industries. And we have a whole class that we do on that. And when we broke up as team, or we kind of broke up as a team and tackled 3 or 4 apiece. And one of the ones that I took on was charitable giving. And there's a UK-based company called CAF, and they're responsible, it was for $10 billion worth of portfolio of all their clients, which are the 501c3s and the nonprofits who pay CAF to manage their charitable funds. And they are looking at a 10-year plan of getting everything moved to blockchain, because that's what holds a lot of people back from charitable giving, right? Is you give it, but it's like, I want to be able to follow my dollar all the way to see the impact that it was made. Whereas, so if we take this and you give your dollar or your Bitcoin or whatever you give to CAF, and or to the American Red Cross, which may be managed by CAF, then you can watch that dollar all the way down to the Band-Aid that it turns into, or the meal that it provides. And so that was one really cool thing that I came upon.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you see use being in healthcare?
So EMR is a big field, right? Electronic medical records right now, there's so much being done in it. I mean, just in Tulsa alone, there are several EMR companies and entities are popping up. We're trying to tackle big data. This is the quintessential example of big data, your personal health existence. And at every point of that puzzle, there is a gaping hole, because there's a paper trail, there's a HIPAA violation, there are those who speak about it. So EMR is probably the primary vision of where blockchain can be applied to. However, when you talk about data of that size, data that's transferred on paper, and phone calls, on text messages, there is a numerous number of systems that handle this transmission of data. And to tackle it, it's no simple feature. And people that are actively trying to tackle it right now are basically using hammers to basically take on a wall of granite. And you're just gonna sit there and chip away at it until you have more folks, more education introduced into the curriculum that'll help more folks tackle it together. So yes, it's a huge industry.
I'll give you an example of a project that's going on right now. People say that teleportation isn't real. Well, teleportation is here and it's now, okay? Every time that we develop a new vaccine, we are basically putting it on some yeast, right, and letting it grow. And then we get that DNA, we'll send it over to a lab in Europe, and they reproduce the same entity, the same bacteria over there that they then produce to inject you and cure you, right? Well, they want to make sure that that doesn't change between. So we're actually using blockchain technology so that they have the hash when they get it. Hey, that is what you said you sent to me. You didn't introduce something that's going to kill me, and it's going to grow exactly the same way in this petri dish as it did the one over in my lab. And that's why I'm seeing a lot of that happening today with blockchain. That is ongoing that we're doing today. Anybody says teleportation isn't happening.
That's interesting to hear. I mean, you just recreated what was here by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of thing.
I was gonna go back, your comment about blockchain and crypto can exist in two different, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are companies today that everything are in-house, and then there's companies that decide to hire like Microsoft CRM, right, to use their service because they can do it better than they can do in-house. Many blockchain things will be done in-house by a company, but there will be cryptocurrency blockchain companies that have value because they did X better than anyone else, right? Would you agree? I mean, and those will be the companies that will have value for a long time in the crypto world. The majority of them will not have value.
I always say I'm very liberal in my technology, I'm very conservative with my money. So I don't own Bitcoins today because I am skeptical of it. But to me, as an old man, it kind of comes down to supply and demand, okay? If there's a small supply, and that's why Bitcoin is very valuable today. So it's very hard to create, small amount, small supply, big demand. Right? It really comes down to that, and that's kind of how I think of it in my head.
And it's finite. It's the first store of value that's finite.
People doing the transactions, right?
No, those are the mine.
Blockchain is doing the transactions.
Okay, I got a buddy of mine who's just on a whim in the oil business that bought one of these.
Miners, yeah.
Yeah. Playing with it.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
But is it doing the calculation?
Yes,
Validated?
it's validated, yes.
It gets paid in.
Correct, in Bitcoin.
So they're part of that network, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They are part of it.
He's paying for electricity.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's his lease, that's my joke, but it's his lease.
It's his lease.
Anyway, yeah.
But he's paying
Just
electricity.
lose money if you figure that out,
Yeah, he's paying for electricity.
He's losing money unless Bitcoin
This is
goes
landlord is.
up in value, right? It's just like mining gold might be losing until gold went up 5 times the value, right? And that's the difference. And like he said, supply and demand. Bitcoin is the first store of value that's finite, right? If all of a sudden they told you, we know how much gold is on Earth, that would change the value of gold in seconds. Bitcoin is the first finite store of value in mankind history.
21 minutes. So you mentioned oil and gas, so I'm associated with oil and gas, and they are currently using it in, well, not totally using it, but they're actually trying to implement it into gas migration and using it in the pipeline business to keep track of pipelines all around our country. And same thing is being utilized for smart contracts for service rendered. So for anyone that's in the drilling business is not a very small business. It takes so many vendors and so many widgets and aspects to come together. And at the end of the drilling cycle, before it goes on to production and completion and so forth, there is so many contracts that have to be executed and payments have to be made. We're talking about billions of dollars that exchange hands and the delay. So from the vendor side or from the E&P side, that delay of payment actually has a big effect on E&P companies staying in business and flourishing and vendors, staying profitable. So it is being brought into current existing industries.
And think of how the oil and gas market then affects the banking market, right? Because you have my 5 billion, I want my 5 billion, who has it?
Yeah.
Somebody else making it, and we both want our money, right? And so that's then 2 industries disrupted by 1 technology because of how it's handled.
Yeah.
To me, I think, at least in my vision, there's a lot more money to be made in the implementation of blockchain solutions than there is in the individual piece that's solving, right? So if I could separate that out, I think the internet, because we made it very public, right? Everybody has it, it's ubiquitous, right? I think blockchain at some point is going to be somewhat ubiquitous. Today, you could start a business on blockchain with 0 investment on any hardware because you can do it completely on the cloud. Right? And you don't want to do it yourself because you need pretty powerful machines, and they got to be pretty powerful all the way around in each one of these organizations and nodes, right? So what you want is somebody else that knows how to deal with that technology and those servers, someplace else dealing with that, and you write the software on top.
Right.
If you can figure out
apps on your phone, right?
how to create the next Facebook of the blockchain, you'll make more money than me buying Bitcoin. I don't believe I know how to create the next Facebook on blockchain, therefore I choose to invest in it this way, because I don't have the knowledge of how to create on it.
If I can get a day trader to be able to trade in an hour instead of 3 days.
Right.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
And then charge them less than the 450 that E-Trade is trading now, man.
Pretty cool,
Did you have a
though.
question?
You know who made the most money in the The gold rush of
People selling shovels.
Close.
pants.
Hands.
Pants.
The what, the
Pants.
hand?
Pants.
That's true.
Spend summer. gold
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
So I kind of think of it that way. I'm more concerned with the pan than I am the gold itself.
I'm curious.
Interested
You
in,
said- You said you're skeptical about Bitcoin, you don't own it, I do own Bitcoin.
Here you go, let me know what you're
What makes you skeptical?
It's just where it's going at the end of the day, who's going to accept it. Right? And I would have been skeptical probably if I'd been very old and been in the early